October 31st. This is a date that is remembered throughout all of history to people who believe it as a dark holiday. You see, that was same for a boy whose name was Jack. He hated the 31st, but not because of the hundreds of children that fill up on candy every year, and gluttony, all the gluttony that is brought forth from this one holiday called Halloween. He hated Halloween. Jack did, but not because of the kids, not because of the candy, not because of the dark holiday. It was because of the tragedy that happened when he was 2 years old. This tragedy changed his life forever, a course in which he would not be able to return. It was the death of his mother and father. You see, people had no idea how his mother and father had died, but they had suspicions that they died from heart attack. Nobody knew. Back to the present, Jack being only 10 years old, he had to learn how to fend for himself, to find water, to find food, to find shelter in the time of storm and cold and heat. The day of October 31st, a man came up to him, handed him a letter and said, "Read all of its content. Obey what it says. Take heed for what lies in that parchment." Jack looked at the parchment and realized and recognized that it was from 652 King Street. You see, he opened the letter and read the 3 lines that make up the body of that letter and simply said this: "Go to 652 King Street, where you will yield a large mansion. Knock, you shall be answered, and you will find the answer to every single problem that you are facing right now." So he did. He made haste. He knew where 652 King Street was, but not because of just intuition or supernatural powers, but because of the fact that he was an orphan boy. He had 8 years from the time of his mother and father's death to familiarize himself with the land. He had been to almost every street corner and street and house begging for years. It is actually not long ago that he was at 652 King Street. So he went there, and he estimated that it was about 7 miles from his current position, and it would take about 4 hours to get there. Now, you've got to keep in mind that this boy was only 10 years old, so you could imagine how tired his legs could have been. But he didn't care. He pressed forward, in spite of all the things that were happening around him. Snow starting to fall, frost forming on every leaf in the county. He pressed on. He wanted his answer. With persistent haste, he went up to the mansion. He found the mansion, went up on the porch, and gave not 2, but 3 knocks upon the old rickety door. Slowly the door opened, and an old lady answered. About late 90s, early 100s, hunched over, she said, "Jack, is that you?" With a voice that was quiet and low. He responded, "Yes, it is he whom you call Jack." She said, "I know about your grief of your mother and father. I know what happened 8 years ago. And I know that you and everybody else in the world thinks it happened because of heart attack. But it was not from heart attack, nor from drug. But it was from the spade itself." Before he was able to question the woman, she told him with haste to go inside. There was a lot of explaining to do. He sat down on a couch that was from the 1970s, And he sat down, dust everywhere. It was dark, eerie, and silent. That is until she looked straight at his face and said, "Jack, I know what happened 8 years ago. You see, on Halloween night, your mother and father heard somebody coming up the 4 steps that led up to their doorway. They thought it was a trick-or-treater, but they opened the door, and to their surprise, there was somebody from the IRS. They thought, due to his uniform. The man came up to them and said, 'Mr. King and Mrs. Queen, you do know that you owe $9,736 to the IRS?' The missus answered, 'But we have not money for even our own food.' With haste, he said, 'Give me all you have.' They said, 'But we have nothing.' They insisted on the refusal. He struck them with a spade. And instantly, there was a trail of something not anybody had seen in that town for a long time. It was simple bloodshed. Blood was dripping down from the staircase, went down the staircase. With haste, it took about 4 hours for the medics to get there. They got there, made an instant bed, and carried Mr. and Mrs., who were already dead, to the hospital. But it was too late. Jack sat there for a second, tried to consume all the information he had just learned that he had never known, life-changing things that happened to him 8 years ago to that night. He said, "Miss, did that really happen?" But instantly, she was no longer there. She turned into a ghost, and he finally realized that there was somebody else acquainting her. They were both not of human blood. Phantom? No one knows. He looked, and he finally recognized them. The simple face that he had seen 8 years ago. That was his mother and father. Mother and father, how long have you known? How long have you been following my every move? They instantly took him into their arms and brought him to the place where they call their own. And you will now see the shadow of this family still on 652 King Street. That mansion in which they lived 8 years ago is still their residence to this day. Thank you for watching. God bless. Have a safe, happy Halloween. And remember, be careful.